Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this video is really going to be sort of a hybrid. It's part review, it's part comparison between two products, and it's also a look to the future of blood glucose monitoring as well as other biowearables. If you're a regular viewer of the Serious Keto channel, you've likely seen me use the Levels software and continuous glucose monitor that they provide in videos like the resistant starch videos that I did, as well as product reviews. It is a super cool piece of software. And that's really the first important distinction between Levels Health and their product versus Keto Mojo and their product, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. The Levels Health program is still in beta, and currently there is a 115,000 person waiting list to get into the program. Now I'll talk about how you can bypass that list if you're interested in the program towards the end of this video. But like I said, they're still in beta, which means they are improving the app constantly. It's really fun to see some of the progress that they've made over the last several months with the app, and I'll show you some screenshots from that in a moment. The Levels Health program is more than just an app that tracks glucose. If that's all you're interested in, you can just use the Freestyle Libre by Abbott and their app that comes with it. Incidentally, the Freestyle Libre is the sensor that the Levels Health program uses currently, although they are also looking at potentially using the Dexcom monitor. What distinguishes the Levels Health application is that it is designed to provide real-time feedback on your behavior that then will allow you to adjust that behavior to control your glucose currently. There may be other things that they add in the future. Really, you will get out of Levels whatever you put into it. If you are really diligent about putting in the food you eat, your sleep, your activities, any other special notes or circumstances, you will be able to see the correlation between that behavior or that food or that beverage or that quantity of sleep or quality of sleep and see how it impacts your blood glucose, with the goal of, after a month, you know enough about your blood glucose that you can control it through your diet and the real-time feedback loops. In addition to the app, there is a ton of resources that Levels offers. They send you a daily report in email. If they see certain things that are going on behaviorally, they will send you articles, links to articles that you can get to out on the website. It's pretty comprehensive. And it's also not cheap. Your first month of the Levels program is going to be $400. If you decide to continue it after that, it's $200 a month after that. A good chunk of that cost is the sensors right here. I believe these run about $75 a piece. About 15% of people decide to resubscribe and to do this long term. But the intent for Levels, at least in the beta, is that people are really going to go all in, really exploit all the resources that Levels has to offer, and within 30 days have a very firm grip on how to control their blood glucose. Levels hopes to be out of beta third quarter, fourth quarter of this year, but when it comes to software development, you never know how these things are going to go. They are working with a number of different biowearable companies. Essentially, they are agnostic when it comes to whatever equipment you want to attach to your body, whether that's a sleep monitor, an Apple Watch, or a Samsung product, or something that's slightly more invasive, like the Libre. Eventually, they'd like to be able to measure everything that they can in terms of metabolic health, whether that's insulin or blood alcohol, blood pressure, cortisol. Insulin, of course, would be, the holy grail. Ketones, did I mention that? And when that day comes, and I believe that day will come eventually, I don't know how long it'll take. It really is kind of contingent upon the companies that make some of these biowearables. That is going to be super, super slick. To be able to take your phone and see any sort of event that happened in your body and to be able to correlate it to one of your actions or something you ate or drank. That's super cool. But right now, still in beta, and it's really focused on blood glucose. So now I'll show you what's in the box for the Abbott Freestyle Libre and how it's applied. Each sensor lasts 14 days, and then you need to replace it. I'll show you in a second what it looks like taking one of these off. So we have a couple alcohol swabs. We have the sensor itself and the applicator. peel off the top here. Unscrew the cap on the applicator. Then we line up this line with this line. Press down. And now we are ready. You want to apply the sensor to the back of your arm. I'm going to apply it to my left arm since I'm right-handed, and when I'm scanning with the phone, just makes life easier. And you want to go between the tricep and deltoid, sort of right in here. So we'll hit this with an alcohol swab. I suppose I could have done that first and then let it dry while I was loading up the applicator. Then you set it against your arm and push. Now there is a little bit of a sting. It's about the equivalent of when you're doing a finger poke with a lancet. It's not horrible, but you're going to feel it. Although the sensor is waterproof, Levels gives you a couple of additional little stickers / pads that you can put over it to help out. I find about one a week works really well. A week worth of showering and it starts to kind of peel up a little bit. I also recommend that when you use one of these, if you've got hairy arms, you might want to shave around that area just so you're not pulling out hair when you pull these off. So we'll remove the backing on the sticker on the 4 quadrants. You want to leave that center sticker though, so it doesn't stick to the monitor. Usually I do this in a mirror, so I hope I get it on straight. Not bad. Then we take our phone, open the Libre Link software, and you'll see right over here that it recognizes that I've put on a new sensor already. So we will hit Scan New Sensor. And we get a notice that says our sensor will be ready in an hour. That'll be 2:16 p.m. In terms of removal, once you get to day 13, you'll start getting little alerts on your phone telling you that the sensor is going to run out, and eventually it gets down to the final hour and it tells you you've got an hour to replace your sensor. Removing it is as simple as peeling off that level sticker and then just peeling off the sensor. The first time I did it, it felt a little bit weird. It really felt like I was pulling off something that was attached to me and that it was going to hurt. It didn't. Don't worry, just sort of get your fingertips underneath there, rip it off. And here you can see what the filament looks like that was actually in your arm. It's really, really, really fine. While I wait for this sensor to be calibrated and ready, let's talk about the Keto Mojo. I have been using a Keto Mojo for about 2 years, or a little, probably about 3 months after I started my whole keto journey. I started with just their standard unit, then I upgraded to their Bluetooth unit, and then I upgraded to their most recent unit, the GK Plus, which I interviewed, around 6 months ago. I'll link to that right up here. The Keto Mojo GK Plus uses both your blood glucose and your ketone reading to give you a GKI score, or a glucose ketone index score. That measurement tells you what state of ketosis you're in, how optimal it is, and it displays that on the associated phone app. Keto Mojo, when they released this, had a really generous upgrade path. If you were using the app on the previous Bluetooth version, you got a notification that you could upgrade, and the cost of the upgrade was essentially ordering some more glucose strips and ketone strips, and then they would send you the new GK Plus. When I talked to Andrew and Dorian at Keto Mojo, they told me that over 10,000 users of previous Keto Mojo units have upgraded to the GK Plus. This new model, besides being a bit more accurate, the other one was accurate within FDA standards, and so is this one. It's a little bit more accurate, but also way, way easier to set up, especially the Bluetooth functionality and pairing it with whatever mobile device you have. And when you think about how many Android-based devices there are out there, it's pretty amazing how compatible this has been, the software and setup. Andrew told me that their support calls for setup dropped 95% with the release of this new GK Plus. Another interesting thing that Andrew told me, as it relates to social media, is they used to see a lot of people posting pictures of their glucose monitor with their glucose score or their ketone score, and now instead they're seeing people post screenshots from the Keto Mojo app. Incidentally, I see that the Keto Mojo app has recently upgraded and now allows you to connect to Biocanic, Chronometer, which is what I've started using in terms of macro tracking, Lifomic, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and NutriSense. But here's an example of what people are posting out on social media. Screenshots like this. One of the complaints that I had initially about the GK Plus, and other people have complained about it as well in my comments, is the new packaging for strips. The strips used to come in a little, it looked like a film container. Now they are individually wrapped, which does create a little bit more effort whenever you're testing yourself because you got to tear open 2 of these. Not a big deal. I complained about it just because I was kind of lazy. The concern though was waste. It just seemed sort of wasteful, that packaging to me. But Dorian at Keto Mojo told me that they measured the actual carbon footprint of packaging the strips like this individually versus in those plastic containers, and the difference both in terms of manufacturing and waste was a total of 1 gram difference. The new packaging keeps these strips fresher much longer. The moment any one of these strips is exposed to humidity, they start to degrade. So that, in combination with a desiccant spray that's on the inside of the packets. Initially they had a desiccant strip, but that made it harder to tear them open. Now it's a desiccant spray. So between that, the individual sealing, and the new sensors that are on the strip, they use 10 sensors now instead of 4, they're getting dramatically fewer strip errors. In fact, if you had the old version and you got an error on a ketone strip, I think it was an E-U error, that was pretty frustrating because that was $1 a strip. And $1 isn't going to change my lifestyle, but it was still sort of annoying whenever I'd get an error and have to load up a new strip. I have not gotten a single error message in 6 months or however long it's been on a ketone strip. I have gotten a couple of sort of wonky errors on the glucose strips, and I'll talk about that right now. The Keto Mojo falls both within the FDA's guidelines for consumer products as well as the more stringent ISO standards in Europe. So what does that mean for you? It means that when you are measuring your blood glucose, the results that you get from a Keto Mojo are within 15% of a lab-measured specimen 100% of the time. So 100% of the time, it's give or take 15%. Now I realize that doesn't sound especially accurate. 95.5% of the time, it's within 10% of the lab result, and it's between 61 and 62% of the time, it's within 5% of the lab result. Now that on the surface may seem a little bit like horseshoes and hand grenades, but if you want pure, perfect repeatability and reproducibility in your measurements for blood glucose, you start looking at about $25,000 for a piece of equipment rather than $50 for a piece of equipment. So if you're going to buy one, you really need to accept the fact that for blood glucose, it's as good as the government requires. Now for ketones, it is exceptional. In fact, 100% of the tests that they did, they used 101 samples, all 101 of them were within 0.1 ml per liter for the ketone measurement. That's pretty much spot on right there. In my experience, I have gotten probably one really off blood glucose strip right here. It was just insane, the number. I don't know what caused that. I took it again, it came back, and it was half that value. I have had a couple that measured high enough that they seemed out of the ordinary, and I measured again with the second strip and got a normal result, which for me is generally in the upper 80s, lower 90s. I have also found that with few exceptions, the measurements that I get on blood glucose with the Keto Mojo versus what shows up on the Levels software is within 5 points of one another. Almost all the time, unless I'm going through a rapid increase or decline in glucose, like from the dawn effect or if I've just eaten a meal. So while I would love to see just perfectly consistent, perfectly accurate blood glucose results out of the Keto Mojo, I accept it for what it is. I had talked earlier about Levels Health and how they're integrating with a lot of different biometric and metabolic health wearables. Keto Mojo is also involved with a number of different nonprofits, including the Ketogenic Foundation, Metabolic Health Practitioners.org, Verta Health, and low-carb practitioners like Dave Feldman. I'll be back in 40 minutes once the Freestyle Libre sensor is active and ready to go. We'll take a measurement, and I'll show you some of the features of the Levels software. I'll then give you my thoughts on the Keto Mojo versus the Levels software, and talk about what I see as the future for bio-wearables. I was just alerted that the software is ready, so we will go back into the Libre link and do our first glucose test. The reading it gave me is 110, which seems a little bit high, but I did have a horrible night of sleep last night, and one of the things that I've noticed, thanks to the Levels software, is that when I have a really bad night of sleep, my blood glucose runs high the next day. My guess is it's probably some sort of a cortisol reaction. Let's test it out with the Keto Mojo. One of the things that I've discovered, and I talk about this in my Keto Mojo review, is I don't really love the Lancet pen that comes with the Keto Mojo. I like this one better, the Care Touch. I'll link to it down in the description below. What I've found though is I can set this pen to its lowest plunge depth and then go in right between the cuticle and the first knuckle. I know it sounds like the most awful place to jab yourself, but really you feel nothing there when you do that. You feel more the click of the pen than the actual poke. Some people recommend wiping away that first drop of blood because that's your interstitial fluid. However, the continuous glucose monitor is actually measuring your interstitial fluid as well. So to me, I think if I'm comparing the reading that I'm getting on the monitor versus the Keto Mojo, that's the best way to go. And the Keto Mojo is reading 104, so relatively close in terms of readings. One of the things that I've noticed is that the Freestyle Libre for the first 24 hours or so does read a little bit high. I have had some situations where it continues to read high by as much as 30 points over the life of the sensor. And I'll talk about that in a moment when I discuss the pros and cons between each, the Keto Mojo and the Levels software. But first I want to show you some of the output that you can get from the Levels software. So here is my Nigerian beef suya recipe, which I'll put as an end card to this video if you're interested in making that. I had that, and I had a couple of glasses of Cabernet Sauvignon, and you can see the response was a 10, so a stable response. If I hit Analyze, it goes into a little bit more depth. I can see that my glucose peaked at 87, so only a 2-point glucose change, and I spent 0 minutes above the target threshold, which is 110. What gets cool is I can hit the compare button and add another food item. So let's look at another recipe. This is one my wife did, so I think it wasn't entirely keto. She made some coconut shrimp. And then I can either do a relative comparison, so you can see they both start at a baseline of 0 rather than their actual score, or if I want their absolute score, I can flip over here, and interestingly, they started at about the same point there, and you can really see that that coconut shrimp, which is in the white, that took me up to 118 with a total glucose change of 36 milligrams per deciliter. One of the new features that they've added in the software is also taking a look at the number of steps that you took over that time period. So you can see what amount of physical activity both before, during, and after eating a meal may have had some sort of influence on your blood glucose response. Additionally, if you have a heart rate monitor, for example, on your Apple Watch, it will include your heart rate. Now this potentially is a way that you could recognize a food allergy. So if you saw a big spike as well as a dramatic increase in heart rate, you may have an allergy going on. Long story short, the software with Levels is super duper cool. If you are at all a data geek or interested in what's going on in your body, it is some super awesome software. And it seems like about every other week they roll out a new update with additional features. So it's a lot of fun being part of the beta. I'm glad that I've done it. If you're wondering, are either of these products, the Keto Mojo or the Levels, for you, let me do a rundown on sort of the pros and cons of each. First off, price. Keto Mojo Basic Kit is $45. and then about $1 a day, maybe a little bit more for the testing strips, assuming you're testing both blood glucose and ketones daily. The Levels program, as I indicated before, $400 for the first month. If you want to continue that on a subscription basis, it's $200 a month after that. At least those are the prices currently. Think of the Keto Mojo as a snapshot, whereas the Levels program is more of a movie. Keto Mojo, you can measure at a specific point in time and see the results of whatever you eat or drink or exercise on your ketones and blood glucose. I have found that my spikes, if I have one, always occur at the 1 hour mark. So typically I will measure a baseline, I will measure at 1 hour, and then I'll measure at 2 hours to see if I fully recovered. One of the things that the Keto Mojo offers that Levels does not currently is the ketone monitoring. I would not be surprised to see Keto Mojo and Levels start working together and let you import your ketone data into the Levels software for analysis. That would be pretty cool. In terms of the consumables, I mentioned before, I have had a lot better luck with the strips from Keto Mojo since they moved to the GK Plus and the individual packets. I have not had a single error with a ketone strip, and I think in total on the glucose strips, I've had one that was just crazy, and then I've had a couple that have been high enough that I felt I should take another measurement. But in total, probably a half a dozen strips in 6 months, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the Freestyle Libre sensors. I find that about 1 out of 3 of them, for me, behaves very poorly. Either I will get readings that are consistently 30 points high for the entire lifespan, the entire 14 days of the sensor. I've also had a sensor that read consistently low, and it died after like 5 days. This is not Levels' fault. This is all on Abbott. And if you get out and you read any sort of diabetic forums on Abbott, you see that people can have some issues with these sensors. Levels is looking at starting to use the Dexcom sensor, and I have signed up for the alpha program on that. Hopefully I get in. And to Levels' credit, they have replaced every bad sensor that I've had. But, it is sort of inconvenient. Like I said, though, that's not Levels' fault. I largely see these two products as being more compatible than they are competitive with one another. And I love them both. I think based on the information that I've provided in this video, it's up to you to decide if either of them or both of them are something that would be good for you. If you decide you want either of them, I will include links down in the description. For the Keto Mojo, you can get 15% off of any kit order. I don't know if that includes their big monster bundle, but it definitely includes the standard kit. And for the Levels software, I can't get you a price discount, but I can get you to cut in front of that 115,000 person waiting list. Again, down in the description, I'll have the links. In closing, I think we are at the front of a really fantastic period for personal health and metabolic monitoring. There were rumors that the Apple Watch 7 and whatever the Samsung product is that's coming out this year may have a non-invasive blood glucose testing. I don't think that's going to happen. I talked to Tom at Levels. He doesn't think that's going to happen. Probably looking at next year, autumn, when we get into the Apple Watch Series 8. And the reason I say that is because I read an article within the last couple weeks about Apple entering into a partnership with Rockley Photonics. Rockley Photonics does non-invasive blood monitoring. So blood glucose, blood alcohol, and I think blood pressure as well are all things that Rockley Photonics are working on. So we could very easily see that within the next year or two in wearable products. Eventually, if we can measure cortisol and ketones and insulin, that's going to be amazing. And I really feel, like I said, that we are at the front end of all of this. And hopefully within the next handful of years, we'll be able to do all of this just with our watch. So hopefully you found this interesting and or informative. If you did, please click that like button and consider subscribing. If you do subscribe though, turn on all notifications by tapping the bell. Thanks for watching.